afternoon and welcome. The ceremony will start in just a few moments. The procession is on its way, but before that, I have a few obligatory requests and notices. Can I ask that all mobile phones are either on silent, switched to flight mode, or switched off? If you could check your phones now, we don't want any phones to go off during the ceremony. Thank you. No personal photography or filmography is permitted during the ceremony. This is due to data protection. Professional photographs are available to purchase, and a stream of the event will be available on YouTube. The link will be on the graduation page. Professional photographs will be taken throughout the ceremony. If there is anybody who does not consent to their photograph being taken today and used for publicity, please let myself or a marshal know. In the extremely unlikely event that we need to exit the building in a hurry, please remain calm and seated. Marshals will assist you in exiting the building. For staff on the stage, there will be a fire exit to the left of the altar, through the vestry. For people to my right, please exit through the rear tower door. And for people to my left, please exit through the main entrance through which you came. Please wait to be directed by the marshals. When the ceremony has finished, the procession will leave the church and you will all be asked to stand. The procession will be followed by the graduates and finally our VIPs. The remaining guests will then be asked to follow. We'd then ask you to make your way to the marquee behind the Vincent Centre for the reception. If any of the children do become restless, I'd ask that you perhaps take them outside for a breath of air. And finally, to our graduands, may I be the first to congratulate you on your achievement. When your name is called, please step onto the stage. You will shake the Chancellor's hand before looking to the camera to my left for your official photographs. When you leave the stage, please walk down the centre aisle towards the back of the church where a marshal will escort you to your seat. Thank you, and please enjoy the ceremony and the rest of the day. Could I please ask you to be upstanding for the procession?
Please be seated.
Good afternoon, everyone, and may I welcome you most warmly on behalf of the University to this graduation ceremony. Today is a very special occasion for you graduands, and indeed for your friends and family and those who have taught you. Attaining your degree, certificate, diploma, qualification from the University of Buckingham is a real achievement and something of which you will always be proud. As I think you will appreciate, you have enjoyed the benefits of a very high standard of teaching from dedicated staff, and I know you will have studied hard to achieve your goals. I hope you've also taken every opportunity you have had to enjoy and be an active part of the diverse and multicultural student body, which will have introduced you, perhaps even today, to people, experiences, traditions, and cultures from across the world. You, our graduates, our diploma and certificate achievers, are the latest in a long and distinguished line from the University of Buckingham. As you look back on your time here and remember the support and encouragement you received, we hope that you will act as ambassadors for your university and continue in all you do to uphold and burnish our outstanding reputation. I congratulate each and every one of you and wish you every good fortune in your future careers. Thank you.
Dame Mary, distinguished guests, faculty, graduands, ladies and gentlemen, a very, very warm welcome this afternoon to this ceremony celebrating the Faculty of Education. The warmest of congratulations to you. It's wonderful to be sharing this with you, and I look forward to meeting many of you on the Balloff lawn in the marquee after this ceremony. I'm so glad you chose the University of Buckingham, our unique boutique university. I'm so proud of it, and I hope that you go on into the world. As you go into the world, you will look back with pride too. This special graduation ceremony today is to confer degrees and other diplomas and certificates in education. And that's particularly exciting to me because before I became Vice-Chancellor, I was also working in education. First as a school teacher, a mathematics school teacher, then as a researcher in education, and then as a professor of education at various Russell Group universities around the country. And my work has been addressing educational injustices around the world. And as I can see myself sitting, as you are sitting now, many years ago, and as you are going on the path in education, I just ask you, indulge me for a few seconds as I tell you a bit about some of the work I did. And for me, I've become, after my PhD, an expert in private education. And everyone knew at that time, 20 years ago or so, that private education was about privilege and about the elite. And that didn't satisfy me, because I wanted my life to be in some way about serving the poor. And so, on one of my journeys, one of my early journeys overseas, doing consultancy on high-end private education, I went to one of the poorest slums in the world, and this was in Nigeria, in Lagos. Anyone been to Lagos, you travel over Third Mainland Bridge and you look down and there's Makoko, a shanty town built on stilts into the dark waters of the Lagos Lagoon. And when I was traveling there, I said to my host, this is where I want to go to find this phenomenon that I'd heard about, low-cost private schools. And they said, this place is too dangerous for you to go. So the next day I went there on my own without my hosts, and I took a taxi to the edge of the slum, and the taxi driver refused to take me in, so I got a canoe in there. And very soon I met some children. There was this little 8-year-old girl, and I said, where do you go to school? And she said, KPS. I said, what does that stand for? She said, Kennedy. Kennedy what? Kennedy Private School. And I went in and found this school that was serving the poor, charging very low fees, and then another and another, and soon I found a federation of 50 or so schools in that slum, and I've helped grow that federation over the years to be 5,000 schools, serving 1 million kids in some of the poorest parts of Nigeria. But I was doing research, and the research compared the private and the government schools and showed how the children in the private schools were doing much, much better than those in the government schools. And I managed to get research funding to look at this phenomenon across the world, in India, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and then in some of the most difficult parts of the world, conflict-affected states in Africa, Liberia, Sierra Leone, South Sudan, and Somalia. And throughout, one found the same phenomenon, that the poor were not acquiescing in the mediocrity of government education where they told me their children were abandoned, but they were enjoying a better education which they provided through the spirit of self-help. And that was my career for some 20 years, exploring this phenomenon, celebrating this phenomenon, writing about it. I wrote a book called The Beautiful Tree, and one of my reviewers said, Thule seems to be suffering from a severe overdose of wanderlust. But I was committed to this sector and committed to educational independence. And that's one reason why I came here to Buckingham, because Buckingham, of course, is proud of its independence. In this very spot, standing here, this university was opened by Margaret Thatcher in 1976. The University College at Buckingham was called then. And Margaret Thatcher said, "Independence is not a gift. It is not something that governments confer, but something that a free people enjoys and uses. But unless we are worthy," she went on to say, "and able to take advantage of a freedom not yet extinguished in our land, we shall become pale shadows, like civilizations before us, who were eventually thrust aside and dispossessed by more vigorous rivals." So we're proudly independent and proudly have that heritage and want to celebrate that. I like to, in these talks, look back in history and find a day to help you remember the day that probably you don't need to be reminded of this day. But on this day in history in 1945, it has a certain topicality with the political shenanigans that have been going on lately. On this day in history, 1945, Winston Churchill lost the post-World War II election. He'd led the country into victory, and then the people decided they wanted some other government. And I think some of the quotes from Winston Churchill really can inspire us and help us in our thoughts as we graduate today. On winning the war, he was very modest, and I think the modesty is a very important virtue that we can embrace. He said, "I've never accepted what many people have kindly said, namely that I inspired the nation. It was the nation and those dwelling all around the globe that had the lion's heart. I had the luck to be called upon to give the roar." You will have experienced ups and downs in your life. You will have experienced successes and failures, and Winston Churchill had the same experiences. And he said, "Success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm." And I think a final quote from him that I want to share with you, because this is your momentous day. And he said this about momentous moments. He said, "To each there comes in their lifetime a special moment when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do a very special thing, unique to them and fitted to their talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified for that which could have been their finest hour." We are hopeful that we have you prepared. We have prepared you and qualified you for the greatness that is to come in each of your lives, the greatness that you will embrace and make your finest hour. The University of Buckingham's motto is Alice Volans Proprius, flying on our own wings. I'd like to think that we have helped you gain your wings so that you're enabled to fly on them. But we also want not just to give you wings, but also to give you roots. We want you to see yourself as part of a growing international family of alumni of the University of Buckingham. We wish you well in the next stages of your life. It won't all be plain sailing, but we know you'll get through. So keep in touch, please.
Chancellor, Professor Barnaby Lennon, Dean of the Faculty of Education, will present Dr. Joe Saxton for the degree of Doctor of Education of the University, honoris causa.
Good afternoon, everybody. I nominated Jo for this honorary doctorate, and now I'm going to tell you and her why. So, Jo read History of Art at Cambridge, one of my favourite subjects. She was a serious art historian, getting a doctorate and working for the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York University, lecturing at Cambridge, authenticating 17th century Dutch and German paintings and drawings for Christie's and Sotheby's. But then she became very interested in school education. She helped develop the curriculum for ARC. ARC, as many of you will know, is one of the leading multi-academy trusts in England, including King Solomon's, which is a school I wrote about in a book about some of the best schools in England, those that get the highest Progress 8 scores with disadvantaged children. And then in 2011, she joined Future Academies, a multi-academy trust in Westminster founded by Lord and Lady Nash, becoming Director of Education. And while she was there, this multi-academy trust grew from 1 to 5 schools, and she set up the Curriculum Centre, which advised many new schools how to establish a great curriculum, while herself modelling teaching in almost every year group, from primary to secondary. This multi-academy trust turned round the performance of these schools in a disadvantaged area, and Jo takes some of the credit for that. In 2016, she went to set up Turner Schools, a new MAT in Folkestone, aiming to fix broken schools in a context with which we're all these days familiar of coastal isolation and chronic underperformance. The trust grew under her leadership to support 3,000 pupils in Folkestone, including the opening of a secondary free school in 2018. Her approach to school improvement resulted in a doubling of the reading age of pupils across the trust. So she has, in a short period, had a profound impact on weak schools in very difficult areas. I first met Jo when we were members of the board of the New Schools Network, which helps with the setting up of free schools, and then on the board of Ofqual, which supervises public exams in England. Over the pandemic, Jo joined the Department for Education and worked on the establishment of the Oak National Academy, online lessons for teachers, and liaised with the BBC to establish their online school. She had to deal with the multiple issues relating to the cancellation of public exams, not least liaising with Number 10, the unions, and the exam boards. And at the same time, she was working on the expansion and improvement of the Academy's programme. Over the past 2 years, Ofqual has come in for a great deal of criticism. So it was typical of her to apply to become chief regulator of Ofqual at a time of such great uncertainty. There are many questions being asked about the future of exams, and to some extent it is Jo who now has the responsibility for answering them. Throughout her career in school improvement, Jo has faced hostility from bloggers, the local community, and press, and she's pressed on with her work undeterred. How lucky we are to have someone at Ofqual at last who has actually taught in primary schools, secondary schools, as well as universities, and who made GCSEs and A-levels happen this year. How did she do all that? Hard work, a good sense of what matters most in schools and what works, a belief that children could be better served than they have been in disadvantaged communities, an ability to get on well with the numerous opinionated stakeholders who run the education system in England, a willingness to eschew the easy life in favour of tough challenges. So this is really our award to a person who has shown great bravery, a great teacher and a strong leader. We honour her today, and she honours us by her presence. Thank you.
Dr. Saxton, by the authority of the University, it gives me great pleasure to confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Education, honoris causa.
Dr. Saxton will now reply to convocation.
Good afternoon. Dean, thank you so much for your kind words. Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, thank you so much for this honour. I can't tell you how much it means to me. Education is good for you. So good for you, in fact, that on a global scale, those who are educated quite literally live longer than those who are not. And specifically, we know that those who go to school are those who live the longest. So it's not just being an internet cafe or in a library, that's not enough. It's the act of coming together to teach and learn that is quite literally life-giving. And I urge many of you, although you will have learnt many skills and knowledge that could take you to fly in any career, I urge you to consider the pursuit of education for the remainder of your lives. To spend your life in education, in the pursuit of education, it is a wonderful choice. But it is not, as Barnaby has hinted, always the easy choice. And it is not necessarily the best paid choice. But it is perhaps the only choice where you will receive as much as you give, and you will continue to grow, and you continue to see those around you who you work with grow, and that is the most rewarding thing. So enjoy the gift that is education. Go well, and thank you.
Chancellor, I call upon Professor Barnaby Lennon, Dean of the Faculty of Education, to present candidates for awards of the University of Buckingham in education.
So I was a teacher for 40 years, and I still am. I'm still in touch with friends from school and university, and although some of them have made more money than I have, I'm so pleased that after I left university, I decided to be a teacher. I hope you have that feeling too. The joy of being able to stay close to a subject that I love, the discovery that I could continue for many years to develop my understanding of that subject, while taking on new responsibilities as the years ticked by. I never, ever found teaching boring. I've often found it riveting. Not enough people say that of their jobs. The fun of working alongside like-minded colleagues. The everyday drama of school life. The terrible things some pupils do. The wonderful things some pupils do. The fact that few jobs have the capacity to make so much difference to the lives of people. The other day, I was invited for coffee with an army general who claimed that I had taught him in 1980. He meant little to me, I'm afraid, except for the fact that his coffee was a reminder to us teachers that in some small way, that had some significance for him, I had done or said something that he still remembered and had had a helpful impact on his life. In 30 years' time, most of your pupils will remember you. Many will be grateful, especially for pressing on during those dimly remembered days of that virus. Many will remember a good deal of what you taught. Some will recall individual lessons and even specific things you said in individual lessons. No one told me that would happen when I was doing teacher training. Because you are the key workers. We teachers, we may not be especially wealthy, but we are so rich and so clever for having chosen a profession which leads to a life brimming with interest and full of moral purpose. Chancellor, I present to you the graduates in education. For the award of Postgraduate Certificate in Education with QTS, Von Abiebi Jamines with distinction. Stephanie Achempong. Lucy Allen with distinction. Lucy Andrews. Ayu Awajobi. Amy Alice Backshall with distinction. Sophie Barber. Ellie Birch with distinction. Hayley Bishop. Elizabeth Boddy with distinction. Monica Bolsover. Charlotte Borrell with distinction. Samuel Brown. Laurel Campbell with distinction. Claire Chamberlain with distinction. Aaron Clark. Shantae Clark. Christina Clark with distinction. Sarah Clegg. Talitha Collinson with distinction. James Conway. Karen Curry with distinction. Annie Cutler. Scott de Wayman with distinction. Samantha Edgar with distinction. Gary Evans. Grace Farrell with distinction. Jamie Francis. Jack Fullix. Jodie Gibson. Molly Goodwin. Harriet Green with distinction. Alice Griffiths with distinction. Rahul Gupta. Lauren Howarth. Lauren Heisman with distinction. Kira Howard with distinction. Fatu Giacchino. Luke Johnson. Harsha Carson. Jodie Kelleger. Edward Lees with distinction. Emily Madigan. Nicole Malloy with distinction. Vanessa Markham with distinction. Rebecca Maxwell with distinction. Gabby Mail. Shahan Mia. Rebecca Murphy with distinction. Louise O'Doherty with distinction. Benjamin O'Neill with distinction. Aisha Osman. Kamar Pennant. Wedad Ratab with distinction. Nicholas Ray with distinction. Holly Sampson with distinction. Serena Sandhu. Jessica May Seals with distinction. Thomas Snow. Katharina Sogno Manners. Rupert Talford Cook with distinction. Lois Thomas. Nicholas Trussler with distinction. Pippa Turpin with distinction. Matthew Tye. Georgina Tyndall with distinction. Livia Vitalino with distinction. Dominic Walmsley with distinction. Andrew Whittall. Phoebe Worley. Mariana Robel. For the award of Professional Graduate Certificate in Education, Afifa Khan. Brittany Georgia Johnson. For the award of Postgraduate Certificate in Education with QTS and Degree Apprenticeship, Daniel Brown. Anna Bucknell. Christy Coppendale with distinction. James Craden. Robert Edmonds with distinction. Jonathan Ellis. Samuel Gatesley. Lorraine Horan with distinction. Dalton Johns. Stephanie Jones. Tabena Oakwe. Alice Paget with distinction. Joanna Pearson Farr. Ruth Settle with distinction. Chelsea Lee Sutton. Christina Wales. Isabella Yaboa. Hadjar Garbi. For the award of Postgraduate Certificate in Education, Marco Paganini. Chancellor, that concludes the presentation.
The Chancellor will now conclude this ceremony.
As the Registrar has just said, this ceremony is drawing to its close. May I again congratulate all our new graduands and wish you all good fortune in the next stage of your careers. As a former teacher myself, I can see a fascinating, riveting, and rewarding, in the moral sense, future before you. As you leave the university, you'll take with you Wherever you go and throughout your life, the knowledge that you've acquired at Buckingham of educational theory and practice, equipped as you now are with the skills and knowledge to rescue young minds from the pain and tyranny of ignorance, flying on your own wings to help your pupils fly on their own wings. May I also say what a pleasure it was for me to confer an honorary doctorate on the distinguished educationalist and now Chief of Ofqual, Dr. Joe Saxton. The university is proud of all of you, its latest sons and daughters, so go well and be well. This ceremony is now concluded.
Please be upstanding.